Before you scroll past this video, before the noise of the world pulls you back into the relentless current of self-improvement podcasts and motivational quotes and productivity hacks that have promised you happiness for the past decade and somehow never delivered it, I need you to feel something. Notice the exhaustion behind your eyes right now, the exhaustion of running, the exhaustion of trying, the exhaustion of doing all the right things, reading all the right books, following all the right routines, and still waking up most mornings with a strange hollow ache in your chest that no amount of optimization seems to touch. You did not arrive at this video by accident. The algorithm did not randomly select this content for you out of billions of possibilities. Something deeper, something older, something more honest than the productivity industry brought you here, because there is a part of you beneath all the chasing that has begun to suspect what almost no one is willing to say out loud. Happiness is not where they told you it would be. It is not at the end of the goal. It is not on the other side of the achievement. It is not waiting for you in the next relationship, the next paycheck, the next version of yourself you keep promising to become. You have chased it for years, for decades maybe. And the more you chase it, the more it recedes. The more methods you try, the more elusive it becomes. The harder you push, the deeper the exhaustion grows. This is not your failure. This is the predictable result of a cultural lie that has been sold to you since the moment you were old enough to understand language. The lie that happiness is something to pursue. It is not. Dr. Gabor Maté, the world-renowned physician and trauma expert who has spent his entire life sitting with the deepest pain of human beings, has taught us a truth that contradicts almost everything modern wellness culture preaches. Dr. Gabor Maté says that the pursuit of happiness, especially happiness defined as the absence of suffering, is itself the source of most psychological misery, because the pursuit requires you to be at war with everything that is not happiness. And what is not happiness? Your sadness, your fear, your shame, your grief, your rage, your loneliness, your jealousy, your boredom, your confusion. All the textures of being human that do not fit the curated emotional state you have been told you must achieve. You have been at war with most of yourself for most of your life, and no one wins a war against themselves. Dr. Gabor Maté discovered something through decades of working with patients in addiction recovery, in chronic illness, in the deepest psychological suffering that human beings can carry. He discovered that the parts of yourself you have rejected do not disappear. They simply go underground. They move into what depth psychology calls the shadow. And here's what he found that changed his entire understanding of healing. The only path to genuine peace, to actual wholeness, to the deep quiet contentment that human beings are actually capable of, runs directly through the shadow. Not around it, not above it, not bypassed by it, through it. Today I'm going to show you exactly what this means. Why every method you have tried to engineer happiness has been quietly making you more miserable. And the one ancient practice that Dr. Gabor Maté and the deepest psychological traditions have always pointed toward. The practice that begins the moment you stop chasing the version of yourself you think you should be and start meeting the version of yourself you actually are. Let us begin. Before we go deeper, you need to understand the mechanism. Because if you do not understand why chasing happiness creates suffering, you will spend the rest of your life trying to chase it harder, with better techniques, with newer methods, with more sophisticated frameworks, and you will only deepen the trap. When you set happiness as a destination, you do something subtle and devastating to your own psyche. You divide yourself into two pieces. There is the version of you that is unhappy now, the current self, the one who feels what they feel, who is where they are, who carries what they carry. And there is the version of you that you believe you will become when you finally arrive at happiness. The future self, the optimized self, the one who will be calm, successful, loved, peaceful, whole. The entire mechanism of pursuit depends on rejecting the current self in favor of the future self. Every motivational technique you have ever encountered runs on this same engine. Visualize the future you. Become the person who already has what you want. Reject your current state in favor of your envisioned destination. And here's what no one tells you. The future self does not exist. It will never arrive. Not because you are not capable, not because you are not trying hard enough, but because by the time you reach the destination, you will have already constructed a new future self further down the road, and you will reject your new current self in favor of that one. This is the trap. This is the hamster wheel. The pursuit of happiness creates an endless rejection of the only self that ever actually exists, the one that is here, right now, in this moment. Dr. Gabor Maté has spoken with extraordinary clarity about what happens biologically when we live in chronic rejection of our current state. The nervous system never settles. The body never feels safe. The interior of the human being is permanently structured around the message that who I am right now is not acceptable, that I must become someone else in order to be at peace. This is the foundation of chronic anxiety, of depression, of addiction, of every form of psychological suffering that modern human beings carry in epidemic proportions. Not because there is something wrong with you, because the entire framework of pursuit is at war with the fundamental reality of being alive. And there is a deeper layer. When you reject parts of yourself in pursuit of an idealized future, the rejected parts do not disappear. They do not stop existing. They simply go underground. This is the territory that Dr. Gabor Maté has spent his career exploring. The parts of yourself you have refused to accept do not vanish. They descend into the unconscious, where they continue to live and to operate, but now beneath the level of your awareness. This collection of rejected aspects of self is what depth psychology calls the shadow. Your shadow contains everything about yourself that you decided was unacceptable. The sadness you were told was weakness. The anger you were told was bad. The needs you were told were too much. The desires you were told were shameful. The flaws you were told disqualified you from love. All of it is still inside you. It did not go away because you refused to look at it. It simply moved into the basement of your psyche, where it continues to influence your life in ways your conscious mind cannot see. And here is the truth that Dr. Gabor Maté has been trying to tell the world for decades, the truth that almost no one is willing to fully hear. You cannot become happy while the shadow is in the basement, because the energy required to keep the shadow suppressed is the same energy that would otherwise be available for actual contentment, for genuine creativity, for the deep, quiet aliveness that is your birthright. You are exhausted not because you have not tried hard enough to be happy. You are exhausted because most of your life force is spent holding down the parts of yourself you have refused to meet. Stop holding them down. That is the practice. That is the entire transformation. Let me show you exactly how. The first sign that you are beginning the work is that you stop trying to feel different than you feel. When sadness arises, you do not immediately reach for a method to dispel it. When anxiety appears, you do not immediately try to breathe it away. When anger emerges, you do not immediately tell yourself you should be more peaceful. You let it be what it is. You sit with it. You notice it. You feel it in your body. You allow it to occupy the space it actually occupies, rather than performing the smaller, more acceptable emotion you wish you were experiencing. This is the most radical thing you can do in a culture that has trained you to manage your emotions like inventory. To feel what you actually feel without immediately trying to transform it into something more palatable. Dr. Gabor Maté often says that emotion is information. The sadness you have been running from for years is not your enemy. It is data. It is your psyche telling you about loss that was never properly grieved, about needs that were never met, about parts of your life that require honest acknowledgement before they can release their grip on you. When you stop running from the sadness, something extraordinary happens. It does not get worse. It gets clearer. It speaks. And after it has spoken, it begins finally to move through you and out of you. This is what suppression prevents. This is what pursuit prevents. The natural movement of emotion that completes itself only when it is genuinely met. The second sign is that you begin to recognize the parts of yourself you have been disowning. There are aspects of you that you have been pretending do not exist for so long that you have forgotten they are there. The part of you that is sometimes selfish. The part of you that is sometimes jealous. The part of you that is sometimes angry at people you are supposed to love unconditionally. The part of you that wants things you have been told you should not want. These are not flaws. These are the contents of your shadow. And until you meet them, until you welcome them into your conscious awareness, until you stop performing the spiritualized, optimized, polished version of yourself that you think you should be, they will run your life from underneath. The selfish part you refuse to see will quietly sabotage every relationship you build through suppression that eventually erupts. The angry part you refuse to feel will quietly poison every interaction through resentment that leaks out sideways. The wanting part you refuse to honor will quietly drain every accomplishment of meaning because none of your achievements are actually aligned with what you genuinely want. Meet these parts. Welcome them into the room of your awareness, not to act on every impulse, not to indulge every reaction, but to acknowledge that they exist, that they are part of you, that they have something to tell you that the polished surface self has been refusing to hear. This is shadow work. And as Dr. Gabor Maté has emphasized again and again, it is not as dramatic as it sounds. It is simply the practice of stopping the war you have been waging against yourself. The third sign is that your relationship with discomfort begins to fundamentally change. In the pursuit framework, discomfort is the enemy. It is the signal that you are not yet happy, not yet successful, not yet where you should be. You experience discomfort and immediately scan for what is wrong, what needs to be fixed, what method might dispel this unwanted state. In the new framework, discomfort becomes data. You feel uncomfortable in a conversation, and instead of immediately trying to make the discomfort go away, you ask, what is this telling me? You feel uncomfortable in a job, and instead of immediately trying to optimize the job, you ask, what is this discomfort revealing about my actual relationship with this work? You feel uncomfortable in a relationship, and instead of immediately trying to fix the dynamic, you ask, what is this discomfort showing me that I have not been willing to see? Discomfort, when it is met rather than fled, becomes one of the most precise instruments of self-knowledge available to a human being. It tells you what is misaligned, what is incomplete, what needs to change, what part of you has been speaking for years that you have not been listening to. Right now, if something in this video is reaching the place inside you that has been quietly exhausted by years of trying to be happier, type 7 in the comments below. The frequency of the person who is ready to stop pursuing and start being, the signal that you are willing to meet yourself as you actually are, rather than continuing to chase the version of yourself you think you should be. The declaration that the war ends here, type it now, not as performance, as a quiet vow, as the conscious acknowledgement that the pursuit has cost you too much and you are ready to come home. The field always responds to those who declare the end of their own warfare. Now let me show you what happens when you stop chasing happiness. This is the part that almost no one talks about, because the wellness industry needs you to keep chasing. Their entire economy depends on your continued belief that happiness is something to acquire. But here's what actually happens when you stop. In the first weeks you will feel strange, restless, almost guilty. The constant motion of pursuit had become so familiar that its absence feels like failure. You will be tempted to start a new method, find a new technique, begin a new program designed to engineer the emotional state you have been chasing for years. Resist the temptation. Dr. Gabor Maté has named this phenomenon precisely. He says that we have been so conditioned to associate worth with productivity that the absence of striving feels like personal failure. The restlessness is not a sign that you need to chase harder. The restlessness is the withdrawal symptom of an addiction. You have been addicted to pursuit. The pursuit gave structure to your suffering. It made the suffering feel like progress. Without it, you are left with the raw experience of being alive, without a narrative about how you are about to become better. This is uncomfortable. This is also the beginning of freedom. In the next phase, you will start to notice something that has been buried beneath the pursuit for so long that you forgot it existed. Your actual life. The taste of your morning coffee, the quality of light in your home in late afternoon, the texture of conversations you have been rushing through for years because you were always on your way somewhere else. These small things had always been there, but the pursuit obscured them. The chase made them invisible. You were so busy trying to get to happiness that you never noticed the moments that contained it. Now you notice, not because they have changed, because you have stopped running past them. In the third phase, you will encounter something even more important. You will encounter your shadow. The parts of yourself you have been suppressing for years will begin to surface. Old grief, old rage, old fears, old desires. All the material that the pursuit was keeping submerged will rise into your awareness. This is the most difficult and most important part of the entire process, because here the temptation will return, the temptation to start chasing again, the temptation to find a new technique that will dispel what is rising, the temptation to interpret the surfacing of shadow material as evidence that something has gone wrong with your practice. Nothing has gone wrong. Something has gone profoundly right. Dr. Gabor Maté has named this phase the moment of genuine healing. He says that when the body and the psyche finally have enough safety to release what they have been holding, the release itself can feel overwhelming. But the overwhelm is not the problem. The overwhelm is the body finally being permitted to complete what it could not complete in real time. The shadow is surfacing because you have finally created the conditions in which it can surface. The cessation of pursuit has made space for the rejected parts of yourself to come home. This is what healing actually looks like. Not the absence of difficult emotion, the presence of the previously suppressed material finally being allowed into the light where it can be metabolized. Stay with what surfaces. Welcome it. Acknowledge it. Let it speak. Let it teach you what it has been trying to tell you for years. And in the final phase, after the shadow has begun to integrate, you will discover something that you have been searching for your entire life without knowing what you were searching for. Not happiness, wholeness, a different quality of being entirely. A quiet, grounded, settled presence that does not depend on circumstances being arranged in a particular way. A capacity to feel sad without being destroyed by sadness. to feel angry without being consumed by anger, to feel joy without immediately fearing its disappearance. This is the peace that the pursuit could never deliver, because the pursuit was structured around the rejection of most of what you actually are. And wholeness, by definition, requires the integration of everything you are. Now I want to give you something practical, because awareness alone is not enough. You need a method. The first practice is the daily check-in. Twice a day, 3 times if you can manage it, pause and ask yourself a simple question. Not what should I be feeling? Not what would a healthier person be feeling? Not what would happiness feel like right now? What am I actually feeling? And then sit with whatever answer arrives, without trying to change it, without trying to fix it, without immediately reaching for a method to transform it into something more acceptable. Just notice, just acknowledge, just allow what is actually present to be present. This practice, done consistently, slowly retrains your nervous system. It teaches your psyche that the contents of your interior are welcome here, that they do not need to be edited before they can be acknowledged, that you are safe enough now to actually meet yourself as you are. The second practice is the inventory of the shadow. Once a week, take 15 minutes and write down the things about yourself you have been trying not to see. The flaws you have been pretending do not exist. The reactions you have been ashamed of. The desires you have been suppressing. The parts of you that do not fit the version of yourself you have been trying to perform. Do not write to fix them. Write to acknowledge them. The act of writing them down brings them into conscious awareness. And conscious awareness, by itself, begins to disempower their unconscious grip on your behavior. The shadow loses its power, not by being attacked, but by being seen. The third practice is the cessation of pursuit language. Notice how often you speak in terms of becoming. I am working on becoming more peaceful. I am trying to become more confident. I am learning to become more loving. Every time you use this language, you reinforce the split between current self and future self. You strengthen the rejection of who you are right now in favor of who you might become. Replace pursuit language with presence language. Instead of I am trying to become more peaceful, try I am noticing what disturbs my peace. Instead of I am working on becoming more confident, try I am exploring what undermines my confidence. Instead of I am learning to become more loving, try I am observing what blocks my love. This shift is subtle but profound. It moves you from a future-oriented relationship with yourself to a present-oriented relationship, from pursuit to presence, from rejection to inquiry. If you have stayed with this video to this point, I want you to understand something. The exhaustion you have been carrying for years is not the cost of insufficient effort. It is the cost of warfare. You have been at war with most of who you are for most of your life, and no human being can win that war. The fight itself is the suffering. The pursuit itself is the problem. When you finally stop, when you finally allow yourself to feel what you actually feel, to be who you actually are, to honor the full range of your interior without immediately trying to engineer it into a different shape, the exhaustion begins to lift. Not because life becomes easier. Life remains exactly what it is. Difficult, beautiful, strange, full of loss and full of love. But you stop adding the second layer of suffering on top of the first. You stop suffering about your suffering. You stop being miserable about your misery. You stop being anxious about your anxiety. You stop pursuing happiness so relentlessly that the pursuit itself becomes the source of all your unhappiness. You let yourself be a human being. And human beings, it turns out, are capable of a quality of peace that no amount of pursuit ever delivers. A quiet, deep, settled peace that comes not from the achievement of an emotional state but from the cessation of warfare against your own existence. Dr. Gabor Maté, who has spent his entire life sitting with people in the deepest layers of their suffering, has said that the goal of healing is not to feel good. The goal of healing is to feel real, to be in genuine contact with your own life, including the parts of it that hurt, because only what is felt can be released. And only what is released no longer runs your life from underneath. You will not become happy by chasing happiness. You will become whole by stopping the chase. And wholeness, it turns out, contains a quality of contentment that the pursued version of happiness could never deliver. Because the pursued happiness was always conditional, always dependent on circumstances, always vulnerable to the next loss, the next disappointment, the next time life refused to cooperate with your plan for it. Wholeness is not conditional. Wholeness is what remains when you stop rejecting any part of yourself or any part of your experience. When you have finally come home to the full territory of being human, in all its difficulty and all its beauty, that homecoming is what you have been searching for your entire life. You called it happiness. You thought it was an emotional state. You believed it was something to acquire through the right combination of techniques and circumstances and self-improvement. It was always something else. It was the end of the war. It was the welcome of all of yourself into the room of your own awareness. It was the moment you stopped trying to become someone else long enough to discover who you have actually been all along. Tonight, when you sit down with yourself for the first time without an agenda for improvement, you begin. Not the next chase, not the next method, not the next pursuit. The end of all of it, the beginning of being. Type 777 in the comments if you commit to ending the pursuit, not because you are giving up, because you are finally ready to give in to what has been waiting your entire life beneath the chase. Subscribe if your soul is hungry for this depth. Share this with one person you know who has been exhausting themselves trying to engineer an emotional state. Give them this. Give them permission to stop. And remember, happiness was never out there. Happiness was never in the future. Happiness was the byproduct of wholeness, and wholeness has been waiting your entire life for you to stop running long enough to receive it. Dr. Gabor Maté has said in his most honest moments that the human being is not designed to be permanently happy. The human being is designed to be permanently alive. And aliveness includes everything: the grief and the joy, the fear and the courage, the wound and the medicine, the shadow and the light. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Who you truly are is not the optimized version of yourself you have been pursuing. It is not the curated self you have been performing. It is not the happy self you have been trying to engineer. Who you truly are is the full territory of your being. Light and shadow, joy and grief, strength and vulnerability. Everything you have welcomed and everything you have exiled finally reunited into one integrated whole. That is the becoming. That is the privilege. And it begins the moment you stop chasing the version of yourself you think you should be, and finally welcome home the version of yourself you actually are. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you truly are has been waiting, with extraordinary patience, for the moment you finally stop chasing long enough to meet yourself. That moment is now. Stop running. Come home. The peace you have been searching for has been here all along, waiting on the other side of the chase, on the far side of the war, in the quiet room where the whole of you is finally welcome. Walk in, sit down, stay. You are already home.